Hello YouTube, it's Lion here with Hobbies of a Man once again, and today we are doing another book review. Today we're going to be looking at a Hamlet book, and the title of that book is The Aspect, Journey to the Firegrove. This is written by my buddy Ajax Ligon, who reached out to me a couple months ago, like over 6 months ago, I think, at this point, to review this book for him, and I just hadn't had the time, and then, Texas froze over. And now here I am, and I'm finally going to review this book for him. So yeah, let's just jump into it. The publisher is Amazon. It's self-published by Ajax Ligon through Amazon, which is pretty cool. I mean, most Hamlet authors do it this way because for some reason Hamlet is like not traditionally viable. I don't know. I mean, there's like a political debate there that we could have, but that's not really my thing. I don't like that. So we're just not going to talk about it. And the genres here are fantasy and Hamlet. And the type of fantasy here that I could really kind of say would be a little bit of epic fantasy, but it's not really like epic feeling. Like epic fantasy has that very like standard like loser kid from the boonies turns into, god of, like god of the world, right? That's not really the case here. I mean, to an extent it is, but it feels more like a heroic fantasy. Something more akin to like old school pulp, where like the main character is just virtuous and he has a lot of meaning and he is the savior of this world by circumstances not of his doing, and not because like his dad was like the king and he like snuck him away and let him live in a village like in epic fantasy. So this is more like heroic fantasy, right? But I think Ajax Ligon does actually say that this is epic fantasy, so that's what it is. Okay, so basically the premise here is that this man is born out of a pod that's like this disgusting like sack thing that just like occurs in the forest. And he's disoriented and he's unsure, and then he gets captured by these little goblin people, and then subsequently rescued by this like jacked, gorgeous, like super ripped orc lady called Rika. And now he basically has to set out on his quest to this place called the Firegrove to figure out what the hell he is. Because throughout the story and the more or less the first third of it, we kind of figure out, hey man, this guy is like very different from all these other people. For one, he's human, everyone else is not. And so like, it's a very interesting thing. I did really enjoy it. I think it's a very solid debut novel. I mean, I use that term loosely because this is like technically his first published work, but Ajax has written in Royal Road before, so I don't know if that counts, but like this is like his first like official book, I guess. And so we do see a few kind of like debut problems, like a few kind of problems in the writing and how things develop, but overall this is a very solid story. The world building is really good. The plot line is pretty enjoyable. The characters are nice. It's just there's a little bit of problems here and there with each one of those categories that kind of like messes it up a little bit. You know what I mean? But overall, this is a very, very solid story, very solid debut, and I really, really did enjoy it. So let's just jump into the proper review section. This is kind of like the introduction. The plotline here is solid. It's pretty good. I did enjoy the whole mystery of the main character, like by the way, his name is Tempest, but that's not like really his name. That's like what they choose to call him. And this whole kind of like episodic kind of location based quest line thing that we have going on. Basically, I don't know how to explain it. Like everything feels like it's the same book and it's the same story progressing, through the whole thing. But it's very like, okay, we're in this location, we're going to do a whole plot line here, and then we're going to move on to the next location, and then do another plot line there, and then move on to the next location, and then do another plot line there. So it's very, like, episodic in like, I don't know. Like, it's not actually episodic because it doesn't have that sort of feel to it. It's like just there's a plot line for each location, and the parts in between the locations are usually kind of like just character builders. They don't really do that much in terms of the major plot line, but they do help kind of like bring the characters together and kind of like help you digest what just happened, right? And so it's a very interesting kind of like constantly moving feel that I really did like. It's very like reminiscent of other epic fantasies. But there's a little bit of a feel here that like the ending was a bit rushed. Because we kind of like the whole book is centered around getting to the Firegrove, right? And then we have basically like, I don't know, 4 plot lines, right? Let me see. We have the birth of Tempest, and then the capture, then the Meadows Crest thing, and then they go to Ella's place, and then they go training, and then they travel to Honeybrook, and then to Ashworth. So I guess that's like 5 places, and then they get to the Firegrove. At the end of the 5th place, like at the end of Ashworth, I think is the right word. He gave me a list of, or like a thing to tell you how to pronounce things, but I don't have a way to access it while I record, so I'm kind of winging it. But yeah, after that section, it felt like the story could end like there, and we could just go to the Firegrove like at the beginning of the next book. But, you know, because the book is, like, the whole point of this book is to get to the Firegrove, I feel like Ajax did rush it a little bit there at the end. But overall, it all developed really nicely. Like, it like, expanded the story and the plot lines really well. Everything unraveled pretty naturally. Like, it didn't feel kind of crazy, like it didn't make sense. This is all very, very clean. Like, writing wise, it was just very well executed. The prose was nice because it wasn't like super complex, but it wasn't also very like simple. It was a very nice middle of the road kind of like, ooh, I don't know that word, but I can figure it out, but then everything else kind of makes sense. You know, just a very enjoyable, like, accessible, like, language, right? But there was a little bit of a kind of like, sometimes like things didn't get explained properly, and it was kind of like weird because it's like, man, come on, you could have told me what this was. You didn't have to like leave it mysterious and not tell me what it is until later. But in general, just very nicely done. Everything was enjoyable, and I did like that they did manage to get to the Firegrove by the end of the book. I would have just liked like another 30 pages between Ashwreath and the Firegrove, so that we could have had like a more kind of like paced out arrival to the Firegrove. But in general, I really did enjoy it. And yeah, so characters. Look, this is the interesting section. Overall, I like them. I love all of the characters. They're all very good. We have Tempest, who is like this like hella virtuous man. This guy is like the greatest, single most like gracious, like innocent, like good man that has ever existed. In fact, he's so good that he's almost a little bit annoying sometimes. And that's the part that really grinded my gears. Like, you can't have a dude that like engages in sexual activity with like all of these random women throughout the story and have him also be so naive as to just like want to save everyone regardless of what the circumstances are. Like, in general, it was good. Like, I really do enjoy that whole kind of like hyper virtuous main character to an extent. But it got like a little bit ridiculous because it was like, okay, this guy is way too virtuous for what he's doing with these people. So it was like, it was weird. Like, this is kind of like the big debut author problem that I noticed here. It's just that the character wasn't inconsistent. He was like consistent throughout the whole thing. But it didn't like logically make sense to have these two aspects of his personality like run in parallel to each other when they really shouldn't exist at the same time. So I don't know, it was interesting, but overall I did enjoy Tempest, and I love the type of person he is and how he interacts with all the characters. And it's really refreshing to have this main character that isn't like necessarily trying to like get with everyone like in a lot of other haremlets, but is also not like against it, and someone that just like wants to help and wants to care for these people because he's just that good of a guy. It was really like relaxing and enjoyable, and kind of like, oh man, this is like a really good guy. I should strive to be like him, but obviously I'm never going to be, because this guy is way too good of a person. But yeah, do enjoy him. Just a little bit like logically inconsistent there. Now the other characters, the two main female characters are Rika and Ella. Now Rika is this giant orc woman. Well, I say giant, but she's not really that big. She's just like, I don't know, 6 feet tall, like a little bit larger than that, and she's just like really muscular. And there's a still certain air of femininity to her. She's not like a man, I guess, but like she's like a very kind of like a muscular woman, I guess, which isn't really my thing. Like Ajax has art for a lot of these female characters on his Facebook page, and you know, I did like the art that they had for her, but it's not really like my preference. But you know, I'm sure that there are people that really do enjoy characters like that, and I did actually like her characterization, if I didn't necessarily love her like visual aspect. I just like that whole kind of like strong woman thing, where like she's actually strong and it's not just like unraveled completely the first time she meets a guy, which I guess it kind of did happen a little bit here. Like Rika did kind of unravel a little bit meeting Tempest, but it was more like she just wasn't sure, because she's like this really tough person, but emotions like really mess her up because she's not used to them. And so it was actually a really cool characteristic like that, but she never lost her like independence and her strength and stuff like that. And so, you know, actually Ajax wrote a better female lead character than a lot of like YA fantasy does. So I really like Rika. She's a really, really good character. Obviously that whole kind of like emotional problem thing leads to some small like communication issues, and usually communication issues of this sort kind of feel really contrived, but Ajax actually managed to make it really nice and not feel like that. So kudos to him for that. I did really enjoy it. And Ella is my favorite character. She's like best girl. She's a fox woman. She's a vulpine, I think is the correct term. And she has white fur, and she's like slight and really like svelte and stuff like that. She's a very cute, kind of like very feminine compared to Rika's very like large masculine presence, which is very nice, and it's a very nice balance. I like Ella a lot because she has a very sharp wit, and she's very interesting, and she's very, very intelligent. And she's basically an engineer and a chemist and everything that you could think of. She's just so cool, and I love how she gets so engrossed in her learning and her researching. It's a very cool characteristic. I really do enjoy it. I don't think I've actually seen another female character in Haremlit that had that sort of characterization, which is cool. Like, I really do enjoy when new characters are at it. Like, she's not like a new character type, like a new character archetype. It's just one that I haven't really seen that much in Haremlit. Like, I don't know. I just like that she's so intelligent, and that, you know, she meshes so well with Rika and Tempest. Like, she offers kind of this, like, interesting, like, emotional edge to Tempest. She, like, helps him kind of be, like, tougher in, like, the emotional sense. Well, Rika helps him with the physical sense, although he doesn't really need that much help in that sense. But, like, they just really balance and complement each other very, very nicely. I really do like this main trio here. They're very, very good. And I really do like how they romantically get involved and how their development happens. It's kind of interesting. Like, Tempest and Rika hit it off right off the bat. Like, the first scene that they're together, it's like Rika, like, flustered because, oh my god, this man, I don't know who he is, but he's attractive and, like, you know, stuff like that. And then with Ella, it's like Ella and Rika have a lot of history, and they're like they used to be lovers, but they're not anymore because they were like basically it's like a lesbian relationship that adopts a guy, uh, and then the guy starts to date them, but like in a very good sense. Like it's just very well written. I really did enjoy it. The only issue I had was near the end. This is kind of spoilery, so I guess you guys should be careful about it. But basically, there's like the emotional culmination between Rika and Tempest, right? And throughout the culmination, it comes out that Rika and Ella were sleeping together throughout the whole book behind the scenes. And I was completely confused because it was like, what? When? There was a scene with Ella where she like hires a prostitute, I guess, to like sleep with her, but they don't like do anything. It's like literally just sleeping together. And to me, that signified that Ella was like pining for Rika, but she wasn't going to do anything about it. And then Rika had this whole thing with Ella where she was like, I'm sorry I left you, but I had to, but now I'm back and I don't know where we stand kind of thing. So I basically thought, okay, they're estranged. They're not going to get back together until, Tempest gets them back together and they all kind of like fix their issues. Apparently they were sleeping together the whole time, and that didn't really make sense to me because there was never a clear explanation or a clear situation where that happened, and it didn't really feel like it was supposed to sucker punch you either. So it felt like it was something Ajax just had in the back of his mind that he never put to paper, like in a clear sense. And so it kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. But that's the only major issue with the characterization here. Everything else is pretty good. All besides Tempest being like a little bit too like good of a person. But overall, really good stuff. I really did enjoy it. There's a few other characters. There's that one bee woman. Well, I don't know. They're not super relevant. Like, they're relevant in the sense that, like, they're going to come back later, but they're not, like, the biggest, most relevant characters to the specific book. So, I don't know. I really did enjoy them. I liked all of them that were introduced, all the female characters. Some of the male characters were not that great, but they weren't, like, bad either. They were just kind of like, we just need another male character because having all female characters would just be a little weird. But yeah, there was a snake. There was not a snake, a spider woman. There was a cowgirl. There was a like several bee women. Like then a bird woman, I think. Who else was there? There was someone else, I think. Can't remember. Oh, and then a princess. I can't remember what animal she was, though. I think she might have been an elf, if I remember correctly. I'm not exactly sure. I read this like a month ago at this point, as of recording this video. So I'm not exactly sure. But basically, all the female characters are good. They're just not like super huge. But very nice stuff. So world building wise here, very good. I did really enjoy how it all works. Tempest is the only human. Everyone else is some sort of anthropomorphic animal, or in some other way, kind of like a fantasy race, like goblins, orcs. I guess there was trolls as well, and dwarfs, which are actually like very interesting. They're not like short. They're actually just really big, but they're like really stocky, so they like look small. If that makes sense, like if you look at a person and they're like really wide, even if they're really tall, they look kind of short versus someone that's really thin but really like average height but thin. They look really tall. It's kind of like a perception thing. It's kind of like the dwarfs in Norse mythology, I guess, or the ones in the Thor movie. Like, he's just gigantic even though he's a dwarf, but he has like different proportions than a human. And there's obviously elves. Yeah. The problem here with the world building was that half of the animal people, you could easily tell what they were. Like, Wolven is obviously wolves. Vulpine is obviously foxes. I think there were some Ursine people, which is like bears. And then there was like some other ones, like there were like bugs or other types of animals that were not clear. And I really dislike that. For the most part, Ajax actually decided to wait to like describe what the people looked like until later. So you were reading about this person and you had no clue what they looked like until like a couple pages later. And that was just kind of really annoying because most of the time he could have woven in the description of what they looked like into the scene without losing any impact. But he chose not to. Although, of course, there was one time where they introduced the bee women, where it was like, it actually kind of made sense because we were in the perspective of Tempest, but he was knocked out. So obviously he's not going to know what they look like until later. But then when he does introduce them, or when Tempest is awake and looking at them, they're not like described immediately. I'm pretty sure they are described a little bit after Tempest talks to one of them. So it kind of doesn't make sense because, you know, if Tempest is waking up, the first thing he would see is this person and he would like analyze them because he doesn't know what they are. And it would have been a really nice way to tell us, you know, like what the character looked like while Tempest was also doing that. So there's a few kind of problems here and there with that world building thing where like exposition just didn't happen when you thought it would. And usually it's the other way around. Usually the problem is that too much exposition happens. And here I guess it was that it wasn't enough, which kind of sucked. But overall, it wasn't really that big of an issue. It was like not that serious. It was just kind of like a thing that was like a little bit odd, like here and there. And it just kind of like, like this could use some work, right? But yeah, powers wise, this is very interesting. It's like magic equals power. And so power equals status. And so people with a lot of magic are nobles and people with no magic are slaves or peasants, I guess. And, you know, there's a hierarchy based on that. And it seems like there's two different types of magic. There's like natural magic and then there's learned magic. And depending on which one you do, depends on how strong you are and how able you are to access certain elements and stuff like that. And then there's Tempest that just breaks the system and he can do his own thing. And it's really cool. I you know, just really enjoyable magic. It didn't really, like, there was rules to it and there was, like, things that made sense about it. But there was also moments where it just kind of felt like it just happened because it needed to. So it's a very kind of interesting balance between a soft magic and a hard magic system. Although it does lean hard. Like, there's rules and expectations to how the magic works, especially for Tempest. So, it's just cool. I really did enjoy it. I did like how the exposition flowed in general. Like, it was just nice. Things were explained to you in a way that didn't feel like intrusive. Like, you didn't feel like you were reading a textbook, which is really nice. But in general, you know, a little bit more exposition could have gone a long way, especially with the characters. When you introduce characters, it would have been nicer to have a little bit more exposition about how they looked and what they were doing. Kind of like their nervous tics and stuff like that. But overall, it's very minimal problems there. It's not like it really bothered me. But, you know, my job is to tell you the issues of the book, so there's an issue, right? Yeah, so let me consult my notes here. Oh, there was one thing, there was also this thing. Well, it's not very clear what some of the races are. Like, there was this race called Reptican, which is like reptile people. But then one of the first people that are introduced of this type is a frog. Frogs aren't reptiles. Like, what? I was really confused because it was like, and the man was introduced as a reptile, like a lizard, and then he turned out to be a frog. So it's like, what? But like it was just like, it was dumb, and it just kind of pulled me out of the reading for a little bit. But it was like a thing early on that happened and that I really basically forgot about. So it's not that serious. The other thing is apians. So it comes from the root word or the Latin word for bees, but it sounds like ape people, right? Like people that are monkeys. So I guess humans, right? So it was a little bit confusing because it was like, what's an apian and why do they have wings, right? So maybe a better name for them would have been better, or or the explanation of them introduced at the same time as their name, right? But Again, I feel like I'm rambling over the same thing, so I'm just going to move on. And yeah, there's a few other questions, like what type of magic is Tempest's magic? Like, how does it work? Why is it so easy to achieve? Because there's a few times where it just kind of like happened really quickly, and it was like, dude, you're just learning. How did you actually manage to do that? Although it's obviously because, you know, magic powers and he's the main hero, duh. And there's like a random like world building things, like what the heck is a mare hund? Like obviously it's like Rika's horse thing, but what is it? Is it like a giant dog? Or is it like some weird like dog horse hybrid thing or something else? Does it matter in terms of the story? No, not really, but it's just something I want to know. And I guess I could know, I could just ask him, but like I'm talking about the book. Like it's something that would be nice to like explain in the book, but it doesn't really matter, you know? But yeah, look, it was very, very good. Everything was wonderful. Like, it was just enjoyable. It was really good. There was a few problems, obviously, and they might have seemed like really big problems the way I'm describing them, but they're very, very minimal, actually. While reading, it's not really important. It's just like, this could have been better. That's all that is, right? And yeah, so on to the art. Well, there's really just the cover and whatever he does on the side on Facebook. So if you guys want to see the artwork for that, do check out his Facebook, like his personal profile. I think he doesn't have a page yet, which he should, but he hasn't had one yet. So yeah, like the cover was really good, and there's two different covers. There's the original one, which is the one where it's like Tempest standing in front of a fire, and then the second one, which is the one with Rika and Ella on the cover. The second one is really nice, and it fits the harem lit thing, but the first one was actually quite more enjoyable. I thought it was just interesting. But yeah, that's okay. And then the art that he has on the side, which I think he should add to the books, but I think there's problems with that. Like Amazon might not let you publish if you have character sheets that are like naughtier according to their TOS. So I guess that's why he didn't add them. But I think it would have been nice if he did add them at the end, kind of like character sheets, so you knew who he was talking about. But it doesn't really matter. Fan service wise, it's not bad. It's a very slow burn romance. Oh, that was like a fan fiction term. I'm sorry. Like it was just a slow building romance, and it kind of worked really nicely. And it like the harem aspect was slow. Honestly, I think it's there. Some people argue that it wasn't. That it was more like not really haremlet. I would say that it's definitely firmly haremlet. It's just a way slower story than the usual haremlet is, right? But in general, it's good. I did enjoy it. I think it was interesting because like you're there for the main romance thing and then the fan service with that couple, but there was a lot of other types of things scattered around that kind of were interesting and exciting and like fit nicely and kept you entertained without really like losing that interest there. So very nicely done. Kudos to Ajax for that one. But yeah, rating wise, this is a 4 out of 5. Very solid score. I didn't really have any problems reading it. Like, it was a very solid story. I read it really fast. I was never bored of it. It was just really enjoyable. Obviously, there was issues because he's a newer author, but it wasn't like anything, you know, like any heinous crime. Heinous? It wasn't a horrible crime in any way. Like, there was just small problems that, you know, I guess if you put them all together in a single video and kind of like talk about all of them in succession, makes it feel like the whole book is riddled with problems, but it really isn't. But yeah, in general, just information wasn't given when you thought it would be given, and that's basically the only problem. Reaching the Firegrove was a really important step, but it felt like the story could have ended earlier, and, you know, that's basically the two main problems. Do I recommend this title? Yeah, man, this is a very good book. I really do recommend it. It's very solid. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, like high level wise, it's very good. But like similar titles wise, I'm not really sure. I don't know that there's anything that really fits, right? Like I mean, I guess Wheel of Time is technically a Hamlet, and it kind of is similar, but not really. Something more along the lines of maybe Dragon Slayer by Michael Scott Earl, or Bloom in Dark by Regina Watt, which I reviewed recently. Those two are more in line with this. It's a lot more like intimate, and it's smaller, and it's more heroic fantasy based, where it's like this guy goes on multiple quests in order to achieve a big quest, instead of like a very large overarching story. But yeah, I don't really know that there's anything exactly similar to this, but Dragon Slayer and Bloom in Dark are probably the best ones out of the all the Hamlet that I've read that fit with this one. So yeah, that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry that this was such a long video. I just had a lot to say. But thank you guys for the support. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. What did you guys think about the Firegrove? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Are you going to read the second one, which I think is already out? So, oh, and check out the audiobook. I think it's just been released like less than 2 weeks ago. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys later.